What's up, everybody? Welcome to an installment of Dave's Man Cave. Feeling a wee bit under the weather, so I'm not going to go up to the mountains today. Maybe tomorrow. I find when it's best not to go up when you're feeling If you're questioning, should I go or should I not go? Do I feel up to it? That means you are not up to it. That will be the time you get clumsy, lazy, don't pay attention, and something happens. And even though it's going to be 81 and sunny today and glorious, not worth the risk if you're not feeling it. So what we're going to talk about today is, I've joked for years, as have others, I hardly have a monopoly on this, but that liberalism is mental illness. And I don't mean if you're pro-choice or whatever, but I mean if you're like a diehard liberal, you have TDS, you're just hardcore left. I've often said that that's mental illness. Because in order to believe the things that that person believes, you have to kind of be able to ignore science. It's like we were talking about the other day with conspiracy theories, stuff like that. To have that ability to disbelieve and to ignore logic, reason, science, valid proof, thousands of people testify, all that kind of stuff. You gotta have something wrong with you. Your desire to believe something nonsensical overrides your mind's ability to process facts, logic, and all that kind of stuff. Now I'm going to put these links in the description, so go up and click on them. But there's been a bunch of studies over recent years showing the happiness, misery, contentment, and mental health disparity between liberals and conservatives, especially liberal women. And it looks like there's something to it. Whether it's from Columbia University, there's been several studies done showing that something like 53 or 56% of liberal women have been diagnosed with some sort of mental health issue, anxiety, something. And as a result, whether they're on SSRIs, they're suffering from depression. But over half of liberal women have reported some kind of mental health diagnosis, medication, all that kind of stuff. And it's like 3 times higher than women on the right. And there's charts and graphs and things to go along with this of what they found in these polls and these studies and things like that, where it's like only 12% of liberal women, I think it was like 16 to, I don't know what the age range was, only 12% are actually happy and content with their lives. Most aren't. They are somewhat dissatisfied to primarily dissatisfied. It's a huge disparity. They're less likely to be married by like 20% or something like that. They are far more likely to be single, far more likely to feel lonely, far more likely to suffer from depression. There was another study tying into this that looked at women with unnaturally bright colored hair are statistically far more likely to have mental health issues. And I know correlation and does not mean causality. No, obviously, having colored hair doesn't make you more likely to be crazy. Making you being crazy makes you more likely to go out and do that. Not that I'm saying, there's nothing wrong with, having blue hair, but it has become a stereotype and a bit of a cliche. And apparently there are statistics and science now to back it. J.D. Vance makes fun of the blue-haired cat ladies and all that kind of stuff. Well, there's actually something to it. They are far more likely to suffer from anxiety, depression, all kinds of stuff. Part of it is because liberal women are far more influenced by social media and the peer pressure. Liberals in general are far more susceptible to peer pressure and not wanting to be excluded or ostracized for their beliefs. That's right, most liberals don't believe that trans women are real women. Most liberals say they do. If you get them really one-on-one and you get a conversation where they're not afraid of being outed at work or on social media and ripped apart, a liberal person is more of a hive mind mentality. All these things are connected. That's why cities are blue. Even in red states, cities, big urban centers, tend to be blue. Why? Because people that want to live in clusters tend to be liberals. They want to rely on government. They need that support system around them. They need the sense of community. They need the sense of I belong somewhere. It's not that living in a big city makes you a liberal. It's that it's mainly liberals that want to live in the big cities. Same thing with the blue hair. Getting blue hair doesn't make you a liberal, but you're far more likely, if you are a liberal, to get blue hair. And liberals are very, very susceptible to peer pressure, societal pressure, and social media plays a huge role in that. Their online persona that they create, they crave attention, they crave acceptance. If they don't have acceptance, they get depressed. They're more likely to lash out. They're more likely to riot, protest, commit mass shooting. I mean, there's all these things now are coming out in the last 20 years where they used to say, well, political violence mainly comes from, white conservative males. That is no longer the case, not by a country mile. The hugest leap in political-based violence is the trans community. That ain't conservatives, folks. That ain't Trumpers. The rise of Antifa and BLM and all these other groups that are giving outlets to left-wing violence. People that are miserable, depressed. They hate the establishment because they're not part of it. They hate the rich because they're never going to be rich. They're likely never even going to be successful. And so they have resentment and hate and anger and jealousy towards those that do. And instead of trying to figure out, well, how do I do the right things to join that club and make money and have a better life and open up my dating pool and be able to travel and do the things I would love to do that I see other people doing. Instead, they'd rather just beat you up and bring you down to their level. They're going to be miserable, you're going to be miserable. It's not fair that they're not successful. It's not fair that they don't have money. It's not fair that they don't have options. It's not fair that they're, miserable. And you might have money, you are happy. They resent that. And rather than aspire to have what you have, they'd rather just take away what you have so that, liberalism is the belief that everybody should be mired in the same mediocrity in general, misery. It's not fair that capitalism allows people to rise to the top. so many of these studies are now showing what we've kind of all suspected all along. When I say connected, I mean literally, it's all the same people. The people that hate capitalism tend to be the ones that suck at it. The people that hate, more freedom and individuality tend to be the ones that are lonely and don't feel like they can do it. They can't make it on their own. They need cities, they need infrastructure of government, and they need all that stuff. Services, because they're not capable of providing things on their own. Whereas most conservatives, their idea of heaven is a small house and 20 acres in the middle of nowhere. And now the studies are really backing that up. One thing with AI in the age of, that we're in, there's a lot of metadata. There's a lot of stuff that AI can pick through and sort and analyze and connect dots. And these trends are emerging. The rise of teen, shootings and suicides and trans shooters and all the violent protests over the rule of law, the belief that Trump's a king even though he was duly elected. All of this is emotion based. It's based on anger, resentment, and it's nothing but a glorified temper tantrum. And that's because people on the left typically don't know how to solve problems. They can't set aside the emotion and go, look, this sucks, I'm upset about it, but let's put the emotion aside for now. And let's focus on the problem, figure out what's causing it, let's work towards a solution that's viable and sustainable. They don't think like that. It's, I'm angry, I hate Trump, I this, I that, I feel this, I feel that. And it's just lashing out in anger. And when you have more than 50% of liberal women loaded up on medication, and it's trickling down to their kids, and the kids are over medicated, and you see the trends with shootings and violence and depression and all this crap, you can't say that these aren't connected. You can't say that these aren't all stemming from the same root cause. We don't have a gun problem in the U.S. We have a mental health issue. And we're not doing anything about it. We're blaming Trump because a bunch of trans people think it's okay to go out and shoot up their schoolmates years after they graduated. Nobody wants to take responsibility. Nobody wants to hold the parents accountable. Hell, liberals typically don't even want to hold the trans shooter responsible. They just blame it on Trump and right-wing rhetoric. I've heard rhetoric from both sides all my life. I've never thought to take up arms and go shoot somebody because I'm a rational, sane, well-adjusted person. I have a moral compass, and it's not even grounded in religion. I just know right from wrong. But the studies that are coming out, and there's going to be more as time goes on, because this is gaining traction. They realize, look, there's something broken in the society. I'm not saying there aren't things broken on the right. I'm not saying there aren't assholes on the right. We talked last time about all the dumb shit, well, at least two of the dumb shit things that conservatives believe, or at least not all conservatives, but it's primarily people that are conservative with the whole tick boxes nonsense and flat earth thing and, oh, we never went to the moon. Shut up. My side believes dumb shit too. And it's okay to call them out on it. But I will say, believing that the earth is flat is retarded, but it's harmless. Believing that, Bill Gates is behind modifying ticks to sell artificial meat and working with Pfizer, that's retarded, but it's relatively harmless. Believing that we didn't go to the moon, even though we just went around the moon and took pictures of the shit we left on the moon and way back when, is really retarded, but it's harmless. In and of itself, it's harmless. Now you can say, well, if they believe that dumb shit, what other stupid things might they believe? Fair enough. I'm with you on that. But overall, most conservative, stupid beliefs are far less harmless, are far more harmless, far less harmful. Even being pro-life. Sorry, allergies are kicking my ass. We're going to cut this short. Even being pro-life. Well, it puts the mother at risk. No, it doesn't. Well, it's going to result in a bunch of unwanted babies. Okay. But is unwanted babies worse than murdering like 1 million babies a year? You can argue that either way. I'd still submit that that's less harmless than open borders and letting criminals run around to murder people and then saying, well, they're crazy. They're unfit to stand trial. We're going to have to just acquit them. Well, wait a minute. If he's unfit to stand trial for stabbing a woman in the neck on a train and yelling about how he killed a white girl, shouldn't he be unfit to walk among us? What about the first 14 times he was in front of the judge for crimes, most of them violent? We live in a fucked up world. And most of that fucked upness comes from the left. The left is fighting to protect Maduro and fighting, they're running around, no kings, no dictators, while actually protecting real dictators like Maduro and the Ayatollah of Iran and stuff like that. It's crazy. But this mental health, look into it. Start researching. Start going through the data. Start looking at the studies. Look at who's happy on average. It's like 51% of conservative women say that they're really content with their lives. They're happy where they're at. And it's only like 12% of women on the left. When you look at who feels lonely and depressed, it's like 5 times or 4 times higher on the left than it is on the right. And when you have that kind of mental illness, when you have that kind of depression, when you have that feeling of loneliness, when you have that kind of being susceptible to social media and peer pressure, my speed was, I was going no speed. I wasn't going to wheelie in a construction zone, but I figured I'd take off a little bit. Anyway, my voice is already giving out because I was having to shout going down the highway. And the pollen is insane. But look into it. And if you're on the left, here's the thing, you're going to get offended. You typically are on these videos. But the studies aren't lying. Columbia University is not exactly a bastion of conservative ideology. Neither are the other sources. But if more than 50% of liberal women are suffering from mental illness, and they have astronomically high rates of depression, anxiety, all kinds of shit going on, and they're raising the kids that we see on the videos of lawlessness, school shootings, gang violence, teen takeovers, group thefts, just rampaging through stores. All this stuff. That didn't happen when I was growing up. I don't remember a school shooting. I don't remember hearing about a school shooting growing up in the 80s. I'm sure there had to have been one somewhere. But this shit didn't exist. What changed? It's not guns. Guns have always been around. In fact, guns are harder to get now than they were back then. But if you have that many parents suffering from mental illness and anxiety and depression and all these things, you don't think that that's imprinting on their kids? And that is helping shape, or if it's legit, like genetically predisposed to being mentally ill, if that's a genetic trait, it's either behavioral, it's either environmental or evolutionary, right? It's going to be hereditary or situational. Either way, if it's environmental and kids are being raised in that environment by parents with all these afflictions and violence and irrational and lashing out and just anger, misery, being overly emotional, being depressed, feeling ostracized, like they don't, all this other stuff, violent. You can't say that that's not going to have an effect on the kids that they're raising that way. And if it's legit genetic, well, they're all having kids and passing it on. Either way, this is a problem. We see it every day. We see our cities being taken over by mobs of just violent, angry, out of touch people. We see Minneapolis, we see all over these anti-ICE protests. That's insurrection. Going after the government, interfering, assaulting them, boxing them in, ambushing them, shooting them, trying to run them over with your cars. ICE are federal agents. That's the federal government you're taking on. You're trying to defund, you're trying to thwart. That is insurrection. And Democrats are fine with it. And it's happening every day all across the country. Yet they don't think of it as that. All they see is January 6th, 3 hours. They think that democracy was almost toppled, but they don't see, even though nothing happened, but they don't see what they're doing every day. Here's the reality about ICE. So far in 2026, ICE has killed what, 2 people? Leftist trans shooters have killed over 20. ICE is far less dangerous than trans people in 2026, statistically. And yet they're called the tyrants. They're called the Gestapo. It's crazy. And you have to be crazy to believe that. And if you are that crazy, and you have kids, what are you teaching them? That as long as you feel you're right, you're right. Well, Hitler felt he was right, was he? Bin Laden felt he was right, was he? Of course not. And that's the thing, you can feel whatever you want. But you got to look at the facts. You can't live by your feelings. When you live by feelings and you view the world by feelings to the exclusion of all else, even when the facts are staring you in the face, telling you, look, dude, you're wrong, and you choose to ignore the facts, bad things are going to happen. Society's going to suffer. People are going to suffer. Anyway, go take a look at the links. See for yourself. Comment. Tell me what you think. I'm not saying it to be shocking or shock value or clickbait. I have felt for a long time that liberalism is mental illness. Just like the kooks on the right that are like way right, talking about the New World Order and the Jews run the Rothschild. That's the same thing. We got loons on our side, trust me. We are aware of them. The difference is most of us recognize them, call them out, laugh at them, and distance ourselves from them. We don't like them. Democrats will never call out their own. That's because on some level, they agree with them. On our side, it's that far minority fringe. On the left, it's kind of more mainstream. Anyway, hope you enjoyed. If you didn't, sorry. We'll talk to you later.